array of cars on the grid. We're currently looking at Max Scherblem in the Mercedes at the moment. You can also see a Lexus RCF, an Audi, and even a Jaguar XKR. Yes, the big Jag is back. So that's the end of the qualifying session here at Brands Hatch. It's Jack Alexander who has claimed pole position. We're currently looking towards the from 20th down, actually, at the moment. So it's where we have a lot of names who are going to be familiar to many listeners, as well as some new names as well. We have quite a good field here this weekend. 42 cars. Of course, coming off the back of another fantastic big grid endurance race at Spa-Francorchamps at the weekend. It's currently from 20th down. It's Birch, Kozlowski, Hutchinson, Tribeck, Day, Woods, Gilbert Wood, Mad Arrow, Debug, Chris Brook, Harry Hottie, Kostadinov, Xavier Eugenie. Got some big names indeed down there. We've also got, as I said earlier, it's Jack Alexander on pole from Nathaniel Shirley, Crawford Brown in third, got Kai Banks in fourth, Eddie Warden fifth, Radek Schuller sixth, Gomez seventh, Dan Barnett eighth, Jagia, ninth, and Crinson rounding out the top 10. Then it's Reitzmer in 11th ahead of Ferreira, Schaefer, Nate Newcomer, Lemke, Sam Kruger, Magnus Dahlgren, Peter Varga, Marco Badowski, and then Birch rounding out the top 20. It's a 55-minute race here this evening at Brands Hatch with 2 mandatory pit stops, and the rain set, by the looks of things, to get heavier as the race goes on. From what we can see here. And in the meantime, I'm just quickly going to switch microphones for a sec. It's my main broadcasting device has finally decided to load, so I shall be right back in a second or two. And just like that, back in time for the start of the race here at Brands Hatch. Damp conditions, you would imagine, would favour something like the Porsche which Jack Alexander has put on pole position. But nevertheless, we are seeing them now, this full field of 42 cars coming down towards Clearways as we speak, and there's Nate Newcomer, unfortunately, I think stuck on the grid there in the big Jaguar XKR G3. But the field now coming down the pit straight at Brands Hatch, just waiting for the lights to go out, which they do now. It's a good start by the looks of things from Jack Alexander. Nathaniel Shirley maybe trying to hold on around the outside for second place. Very clean start indeed so far as everyone tries to negotiate Paddock Hill, Bend and Druids for the first time. And unfortunately, I think Nate Newcomer has retired to the pits. There's Crawford Brown there in third place. He's got Kai Banks on the inside of him there being... And there's a kind of 55, that's Eddie Warden going onto the grass there in the background. Currently still Alexander, Shirley, Brown, Banks, Schuller up into fifth. Gomez is now up into sixth place in the second four BMW M4s racing very hard with Radek Schuller at the moment for 5th place. As we can see, they're side by side coming down Pilgrim's Drop straight now into Hawthorns. Fantastically quick corner as they all come filing through here. Jack Alexander has checked out in the Porsche, and Mad Al has made a good start as well, up into 23rd place. Eddie Warden, the biggest faller there after he was edged onto the grass coming out of Graham Hill Bend, down all the way in 13th place, but in the fastest Lamborghini. Crawford is actually using the same livery on his Lexus as him and Eddie Warden used during the Spa 9 hours at the weekend. A throwback to a classic from Top Gear, the Cheap Police Car Challenge, as Martin Chafer comes across the line with the fastest lap of the race so far on lap 1. There's a couple of cars quite a long way down the field there. I wonder if there's been an incident further back in the pack. They're just coming across the start-finish line in a sec as the leaders are coming out of Graham Hill Bend. Looking at Marco Badowski at the moment in 17th place. He's got Peter Varga in a Ferrari just behind him, and in front of him he's got Samuel Kruger and Magnus Dahlgren. Varga there. I thought Urch was maybe going to have a little look there. There's Adam Kozlowski in the Nissan in 22nd place. A few places behind them. Now looking at Mad Al in the Nissan GTR. He is battling with Kozlowski at the moment. I believe that might be Day. Yes, that is Day there in car number 420 in the background as well. The green Jaguar is that of Xavier Eugeni, as Mad Al losing a couple of positions there, unfortunately, but he's putting up a very stout defence against Day as they come through the back end of the Grand Prix circuit into this little left-hander here, where I remember Daniel Junkadea in the Mercedes had the mother and father of all saves in real life when he lost the back end and corrected it with much aplomb, I should add. Currently just briefly on board with Debug there in the Bentley. One of two Bentleys. He's got Simon Tribeck just in front of him as they all Constantine are up again into Paddock Hill Bend. You got Kozlowski and Wood there just in front of them. The Jaguar, very much more of a passion project seemingly, because it was actually built by a private team from Switzerland, Emil Frey Racing, and with no input or feedback or financing or anything from Jaguar themselves. So very much a passion project, but some tracks like Monza and Paul Ricard, it is phenomenally quick in a straight line. Unfortunately, most of the straights here at Brands Hatch aren't terribly long, and unfortunately as well, you do also have the wet weather conditions, so that's going to be something to perhaps keep an eye on later on during the race. We're currently looking at Magnus Dahlgren at the moment in the grey and lime green Audi R8 LMS Evo. Coming up towards clearways now. He's got Kruger right behind him. I wonder if Kruger gets a good exit here, he might be able to have a go trying to make an overtake here on the way into Paddock Hill Bend. I don't think he's going to be close enough though, and Magnus taking a defensive line indeed on the way in. The brief yellow flag for a second. Coming up to Druids once more now. Magnus really having to go very defensive indeed. Graham Hill Bend was made a third tighter back in the late 90s. Used to curve a lot more towards the inside. It was actually quite a quick corner as well. Currently looking at Harry Hottie in the Lamborghini at the moment, with Kevin Shepherd just behind him in a BMW M4, and then Kostadinov just behind the pair of them in the Lexus RCF. You can see Mason there in the background as well. Just behind them is you got Craig Gilbert-Wood, Damien Vilk, Tom Carroll, Dominik Mijiewski, Matt Sherblum, Matt Hodgson, Damien Lowe making his Constructors Championship debut in 39th place, and Gianni Lenz rounding out the top 40. Damien being in Singapore, it is already, well, we're already well into Wednesday morning, and it must be quite early. I'm just going to check for myself. I imagine it's about 5:30, just gone 5:30 in the morning for him. So, nice early start. Indeed, it is 5:32 at the moment in Singapore. So, currently looking at Billy Hutchinson as we see Chris Brook battling away with Atkinson there for 24th place. There's Mad Al there in 25th with Will Day. Just behind him is Atkinson. So Brook, excuse me, gonna have a look up the inside into Surtees, not quite close enough to be able to do so. We come down at Pilgrim's Drop once again. Under the bridge, which Chris van der Drift crashed into during a Super League Formula race. And also Pilgrim's Drop was the site of the that horrific Formula 3000 incident, which saw Johnny Herbert taken to hospital with very, very severe leg injuries. In fact, it was if that hadn't have happened, then who knows how many races or championships he could have won. But nevertheless, 3 Grand Prix wins and an overall win at Le Mans for Mazda in 91. Still nothing to be sniffed at. We've already got the first pit callers coming in. Lemke, Varga, Wood, Al, Eugenie and Hottie all diving into the pits as the pit window has just opened for their opening pit stops. Coming up to Drews, we see Kevin Shepherd and having to go. He's going a little bit wide there, but thought for a moment he was actually going to make contact with Birch, but well avoided from the pair of them. Shepherd suffering a little bit with quite bad oversteer there. You can see the way he was having to throw on opposite lock coming out the Graham Hill bend, and that might be enough for Kostadinov to get past. Side by side coming down the Pilgrim's Drop straight. Kostadinov is already past as they head on the brakes now into Hawthorne Bend. Shepherd still right there with him, though. You can see Mason in the background just biding his time. There's Craig Gilbert-Wood in the Lamborghini just in the back of shot there as they come through the double apex right-hander at Westfield. And then heading up into Sheens now. And into Stirling's. Phenomenal part of the circuit, this, and the reason why they're only allowed a handful of quote-unquote noisy days each year is because of the village which backs onto the circuit. As Mason, I think, was just coming to the pits there. We see so has Day. You see Marco Badowski in the pits as well. There's one of the Porsches coming out of the pits. There's a Bentley off there in the background, which might be, I don't know 100%. I want to say it might be Debug or Trebek. I couldn't quite tell which number it was, unfortunately. We'll have a look to see who plummets down the leaderboard. Out of those two, we're kind of looking at Crawford Brown at the moment with Radek Schuller right on his tail. Jack Alexander has practically checked out at this stage. He's already 7 seconds clear of Nathaniel Shirley, who's almost acting like the cork in the bottle. In fact, it was not Debug. I do apologise. It was indeed Trebek. We're out of clearways now. It's going to be a drag race down to Paddock Hill Bend between Crawford Brown and Radek Schuller. Brown able to hold on to the position as George Gajia comes into the pits. I think he may have had a little bit of contact with the wall there on the way in. At the chicane, Brown going a little bit wider there at Druids. That can be enough for Schuller to get past, not quite. Brown has the inside line though for Graham Hill Bend's going to hold on here. Remains to be seen how long he can hold on to the position, and the answer is not long at all, unfortunately, as Radek Schuller moves up into third place, getting Crawford Brown on the inside there at 30s. You can see the camera on the McLaren see on there the word Rosas in on the rear view camera. Quite an amusing sight nonetheless. Still racing incredibly hard in these really tricky weather conditions here. More drivers calling into the pits for their first pit stop of the race. Neither Radek Crawford nor Shirley doing the same this time. High Banks just in the background there. There's the blue and yellow Porsche. I think that might be the car of Matt Hodgson, who has just made his second and final pit stop. Crinson has come into the pit, so has Kruger. Kruger in the 69 Mercedes, Crinson in the 707 Lexus. So they are making their first of 2 mandatory pit stops at the moment. Still half an hour to get both pit stops in. Schuller is now already on the back of Nathaniel Shirley, as Jack Alexander is just pulling further and further away from these two. Can't actually see his car in the frame. It's actually that far ahead. Making very, very good use indeed of the Porsche's natural ability in the wet. Interesting to see how the drivers are actually using the curbs a fair bit here in these conditions. Blue flag's already waving because pit stop cycle means traffic. So this is going to be quite interesting actually to keep an eye on. Currently looking at Nate Newcomer, who has joined in the race. See Damien Lowe having made a pit stop already. Nate, unfortunately, way down the field after I think he missed the start, sadly. Currently looking at Radek Schuller at the moment, right on the gearbox of the BMW M4, as Birch comes into the pits from 17th. Kostadinov does the same in the 83 Lexus. As Schuller goes up the inside at 30s, it's going to be a drag race now down to Hawthorns. Shirley does have the inside for the corner, and we'll see in a sec who's where when they file through. Currently looking at Sergio Lemke at the moment in the 71 Mercedes, currently in 23rd place at the moment, with him and Gajea in the Lexus both having made their first pit stops, as Will Day brings the 420 Aston Martin into the pits. Through 30s now, you can see Sam Kruger's Mercedes in the background there as well. So this could be quite interesting. It's Shirley doing his best to keep Schuller behind him, but this is bringing Crawford Brown back into the mix. And the way things are going, it might actually drag Kai Banks in as well in the 34 Audi. We're currently looking at the helicam at Radek Schuller coming down through Graham Hill Bend now as Martin Chafer comes into the pits from 11th. So does Chris Brook in the 23 McLaren. Schuller still trying to find a way past. So Simon Trebek also coming into the pits. Coming down Pilgrim's Drop through Hawthorne's, excuse me, now. Is Schuller going to be close enough to have a look up the inside into Westfield? Yes, he is. That is a fantastic overtake. Very opportunistic there from Radek Schuller. Shirley trying to have a go back at Sheens, but not quite able to get the job done as they head up into Sterling's. Absolutely fantastic driving there from Radek Schuller, knowing he had to really send it to try and get the job done, and he did. Currently looking at battle here between Damien Vilk and Crinson. Damien yet to make his first pit stop. There's Craig Gilbert Wood just in front of them in another one of the Huracan GT3s. As Wrightsma comes into the pits from the top 10 for his first pit stop. Crinson is actually currently the highest placed driver to have pitted so far, down in 18th place, and he wants to try and get past Damien to make that 17th. So coming out of clearways down past the pits now, heading up to Paddock Hill is one of the Nissan GTRs coming out the pits for good measure, as Crinson gets the job done on the way into Paddock Hill Bend. Damien thinking of having a go back, not quite able to get the job done there. I'm not sure, trying to work out which Nissan that is, whether that might be Wrightsma or not. Can't tell, unfortunately. In fact, the timing has just updated. Yes, it indeed is Wrightsma in front of Crinson, so we'll see how that develops. Half an hour left on the pit window here. Coming through Hawthorne and Westfield. Iconic piece of circuit, this. A British GT round here, very, very popular indeed. Currently looking at Nathaniel Shirley at the moment, with Crawford Brown right behind him. Then with Kai Banks also joining in the fun as well. Atkinson's pitted the Nissan, car number 112, for the first time. This battle here. Now looking at Gojea versus Lemke. There's only a couple of tenths of a second in it as they come through Paddock Hill. Coming up now towards Druids. Lemke not close enough to be able to have a go on the brakes, as that would be considered a dive bomb, and that is very much frowned upon. Meanwhile, Shirley and Brown racing away here. Shirley losing the position there to Crawford Brown. They're going to hopefully not try and go three wide here into clearways. Shirley barely holding on to fourth place against Kai Banks. So Crawford Brown is up into third place in the Lexus. Kai Banks and Nathaniel Shirley, though, are having a proper scrap for fourth place. Shirley on the inside there for Paddock Hill, trying to use as much road as possible. On the Banks may be able to have a look up the inside. I don't think he's going to be close enough at Graham Hill Bend. Will he be close enough at Surtees, though? And this is also bringing Hugo Gomez into the mix in another one of the BMW M4s. So BMW and Audi doing especially well at the moment. Just passing a Mercedes there in the background. Can't quite tell who that was, unfortunately. Coming up now through towards Westfield. As I said that Gomez is right on the back of this little train of cars. Meanwhile, Gagea is trying to find a way past Damien Vilk. Well aware that he's got Lemke and Kruger right behind him for company. Marco Badowski a bit behind them in the Bentley. As things stand so far, Vilk is holding on to 17th place. Come through Hawthorne once again. Not quite close enough. Is Gagea, as there's a Ferrari off in the background, unfortunately. There's Harry Hottie there. I can't quite tell who that was, which Ferrari driver. So we'll find out in a sec. It was not Varga, I know that much, because Varga's in the red and blue car. Maybe Schaefer? I'd have thought. There's Mason Day, Al and Carroll down at the bottom there have all made both of their pit stops as Damien Vilk comes in for his first pit stop. So Gagea has moved up to 17th, and Lemke and Kruger and Badowski have all moved up places as well. Coming up towards Clearways once again. Battle, here we are with Dan Birch in the Nissan GTR. He's got Chris Brook right behind him in the grey McLaren, and Gianni Lenz in a very brightly coloured Aston Martin. Clearly there was nothing left in the yellow and black ink cartridges. It was just cyan and magenta. Although there might have been a little bit of yellow left, hence the yellow detailing on the grille. But either way, on a grey and dreary and overcast and damp English afternoon, you would be able to spot an Aston Martin in that colour very, very easily. Coming down the Pilgrim's Drop straight now is Harry Hottie. Got Kostadinov right behind him in the Lexus. Kostadinov not quite close enough there. Schaefer down in 30th as well. There's Matt Sherblum in 34th. Just letting the couple of leaders past, I think. There's Jack Alexander down in 8th place as well. We're looking at Fred Ferreira battling with Magnus Dahlgren. Alexander's actually made his first pit stop as well, the first of the front runners to bite in that regard. Ferreira's got about 4.3 seconds. You just saw the blue Bentley there in the background. That's debug. There's Craig Gilbert-Wood off the track. It's enough to let Lemke, Kruger and Gagea, that battle to all get past. You can actually see Badowski just about in the back of shot briefly in the Bentley. There he is. I'm looking at Samuel Kruger at the moment as they head down the hill towards Hawthorns. Now on board with Dan Barnett. Audi doing very well indeed so far. 3 cars in the top 10. Back to Harry Hottie's Lexus with Kostadinov still right there with him. Sherblum and Nate Newcomer yet to pit so far. Tribex made his first pit stop, as has most of the others, apart from, in this list here, Gianni Lenz and Craig Gilbert-Wood. Excuse me. So we'll see how this plays out. Still 39 cars running, which is excellent, all things considered. Just past the half an hour to go mark here as Lenz finally comes in for his first pit stop in the Aston. There's a BMW, that's Kevin Shepherd there, just getting out of the way, I think, or struggling with the balance of his car earlier by the looks of things. And Reitzmer and Crinson just getting past him there. Shepherd, another driver, yet to make his first pit stop in the race, along with Crawford Brown, Nathaniel Shirley, Hugo Gomez, Kai Banks, Eddie Warden, Magnus Dahlgren, Fred Ferreira, Debug, and Billy Hutchinson. Now looking at the battle here between Kai Banks and Nathaniel Shirley, Hugo Gomez is also in the mix as well. He's got Gianni Lenz's freshly pitted Aston Martin just in front of him, excuse me. And Radek Schuller leading the race still. Alexander with the fastest lap, making good use of the clear track he had earlier on. Radek's got a couple of back markers in front of him to try and pick off. He's past Tribec as the Jaguar goes off in the background there. That may have been Eugenie, I think. But either way, the white McLaren there is probably going to be in line for a bit of a looking into from the stewards, one would imagine. Crinson battling away. Reitzman gets past up the inside at Surtees. That is for 13th place. Going to have a drag race now down towards Hawthorns. Reitzman going back into the slipstream of the Lexus. Meanwhile, Shirley and Banks still battling away, this time for third place now, as Radek Schuller comes into the pits. Meanwhile, we're back with Dan Crinson, who has got the very, very close attentions of Reitzmer with him. Gomez is in fourth place now and is on the back of Kai Banks, as Magnus Dahlgren in 8th place at the moment. So halfway through the race now, it's Crawford Brown leading from Nathaniel Shirley, Kai Banks in 3rd, Gomez 4th, Jack Alexander in 5th, Warden 6th, Schuller 7th, Dahlgren 8th, Ferreira 9th, Debug rounding out the top 10, Hutchinson 11th, Barnett 12th, Crinson 13th, Reitzmer 14th, Gajaya 15th, Lemke 16th, Kruger 17th, Badowski 18th, Varga 19th, and Atkinson rounding out the top 20. Gilbert Wood in 21st place, Chris Brook up into 22nd in the McLaren, and Kevin Shepherd just coming out of the pits in 23rd. Birch 24th, Wood 25th, Vilk 26th, Chafer 27th, Hottie 28th, Mijiewski 29th, and Tribec rounding out the top 30. Not Jack Alexander, excuse me. So I didn't quite catch, unfortunately, who is in 31st. It's Xavier Eugenie in 31st ahead of Will Day. Then it's Matt Sjöblom, Mason, Gianni Lenz, Mad out, Kostadinov, Carroll, Hodgson, and Lowe. Kostadinov having made his second and final pit stop. Sjöblom just getting out of the way of these cars here as we see the Audi. I think that's Kai Banks having just come out of the pits. There's the 19th arrive. Jack Mason going wide there. Sjöblom running a little wide at the exit of Paddock Hill as well. Got the Rutronic Porsche of Jack Alexander there in this as well. And same for Kai Banks. Sjöblom currently in 34th place at the moment in the Mercedes, with his indicator on as well. Gilbert Woods come into the pits for his first pit stop, I've noticed. There's Gianni Lenz just in the background there, back of shot. Nate Newcomer also on track as well. It was unfortunate, the McLaren in question, I can't remember unfortunately who was driving it. We're still looking at Matt Sjöblom as he comes up through Sheens, with Lenz and Al right behind him in the Aston Martins, coming through Sterling's now. And on the run up towards Clearways. This being the battle for 34th at the moment. There's the Rutronic Racing Porsche coming into the pits. Jack Alexander making his second and final pit stop as both Aston Martins get past Sherblum on the pit straight. So Matt's down to 36th position. Now we're looking at Lemke in 11th, battling away with Kruger and Gajea still. Oh, so excuse me, it wasn't Alexander, it was actually Hutchinson who's come into the pits. Barnett's also come in, and so has Crinson. Chris Brook in 18th place at the moment in his McLaren, car number 23. Got Dan Crinson right behind him in the Lexus. Coming through Graham Hill Bend now. Now looking at Dan Birch in the Nissan. Dan Barnett just in front of him, and now Crawford Brown, Eddie Warden both coming in for their first pit stops. Still Nathaniel Shirley leading from Jack Alexander. There's Debug getting involved in this battle here as all hell has broken loose by the looks of things, with Gomez and Banks also getting involved as well. Banks getting a good run up the inside. Debug not quite able to hold on, unfortunately, against Gomez as well, with Crawford Brown and Eddie Warden in the pits. It's a very spicy battle which has just gone through Paddock Hill Bend. Back with Dan Birch. There's Debug. Ferrari behind him is that of Jack Mason, so it's not for position. Down into 8th place now. As so excuse me, I don't think Warden's showing as having not made his first pit stop for some reason, as Hutchinson and Birch come in for their final pit stops. Crinson and Barnett, the two drivers who we're going to have to keep a little bit of an eye on here, as they're the first to have made both of their mandatory pit stops. Just under a quarter of an hour of the pit window left to go. Shirley still yet to pit, but no doubt will be losing a few positions. There's a Aston Martin off there. I think that's might have been Will Day who's gone off in the Aston between Sheens and Sterling's. Coming down towards Clearways now comes Debug in the number 13. Bentley is right on the back of Gomez. Is he going to have a look into Paddock Hill? Not quite close enough. Now back to George Gajea. He's lost one position to a Mercedes, which might be Lemke. In fact, no, excuse me, he hasn't. Kruger's coming to pits, Lemke's behind him, so that might be Sherblum there, as Craig Gilbert Wood and Billy Hutchinson are battling away. Hutchinson having made both of his mandatory pit stops, so you can see Xavier Eugenie there in the background as well. Kruger has just made his final pit stop of the race. Eugenie just pulling over to let this battle through. That might actually be Radek Schuller there. Just getting past, indeed it is, and that in turns actually left the door open for Eugenie, but he didn't from Craig Gilbert Wood, but Craig Gilbert Wood actually lost it on his own. Unfortunately, just got a wheel on the wet grass, and unfortunately wet grass not the best means of trying to slow a car down. Meanwhile, Chris Brook has sustained very heavy front end damage coming out of Paddock Hill Bend, and oh my, that is an absolutely horrendous mess he has made to the front of the 23 McLaren. Now looking at George Gajea, got Will Day behind him. It's not for position. You can see Lemke in the background as well. There's Radek Schuller in second place, having just got past Jack Alexander, but these two are absolutely, I believe that is Alexander. quick check, and just as I do that, we cut back to Mad Al in 31st place. Good job as ever from Al. He's got the recovering Craig Gilbert-Wood just behind him. And then Mijajewski in the McLaren just behind him. So this could be another fairly tasty battle to keep an eye on. Now we're with Nathaniel Shirley, trying to get past back markers. A little bit of contact with a McLaren there at the back of the field. This might be getting looked into, potentially. There's Nigel Wood in the 78 Jaguar. And now we are on board with Damien Vilk in 20th place in the 24 Lamborghini Huracan. Coming up to Druids now. Taking a good line through there. He's got Martin Chafer just behind him, as Brooke has come in not only for his final mandatory pit stop, but to also get his car fixed as well. Xavier Eugeni moves up into 27th place. Gilbert Wood and Sherblum and Eugenie all needing to make pit stops still. Jack Alexander leads from Radek Schuller, Crawford Brown in 3rd, Shirley in 4th, Banks 5th, Gomez 6th. It's showing at the moment on the timings on the little monitor chart bit there, although I think both Gomez and Banks have actually got past Shirley. So we'll keep an eye on that one for you. We're with Magnus Dahlgren now in 12th place. Debug is showing as being in the pits. In fact, I am right indeed. Banks is in 4th, Gomez 5th, Shirley down in 6th place there. There's Peter Varga just getting past Gianni Lenz. Lenz being a lap down on Varga at the moment, but Varga is also yet to make his second pit stop as... Oh, Hi Gianni, going off the track unfortunately there a little bit. With Dan Barnett now, he's got Kevin Shepherd right behind him, and now with Jack Alexander in the Rutronic Racing Porsche. Setting fantastic lap times is Jack at the moment. He's got 10.5 seconds on Radek Schuller. Currently go on board with in the helmet cam. Going through Graham Hill there and coming up to Surtees now. Shirley has come into the pits for his final pit stop. And Eddie Warden, for some reason, still showing us needing to make 2 pit stops. Be interesting to see how this goes. Still damp and drizzly here at Brands Hatch. Matt Hodgson in the pits in the 92 Porsche. Craig Gilbert-Wood in for his final stop in the 717 Lamborghini. Mad Al comes through Graham Hill Bend and on the run now to Surtees. Surtees, of course, being named after the former motorcycle and Formula One Grand Prix champion, John Surtees, to this day still the only driver ever to have won the Premier Class on both 2 and 4 wheels. Debug just coming out the pits there in 22nd place, meanwhile in the background. Just running a bit wide there, does out at the exit of Sheen's. So named after Barry Sheen, another legendary bike racer and cult hero in the 1970s. Through clearways now comes Mad Al, still in 29th place. Dropped back a little bit from Harry Hottie. Meanwhile, Radek Schuller just getting past some traffic there down the Pilgrim's Drop Straight. Meanwhile, Reitzmer, Badowski, Gajea all in the pits at the moment to serve their final pit stops. coming through Westfield now, through Dingledale, up the hill, through Sheens, into the left-hander at Stirling's. Phenomenal circuit to drive this from a driver's perspective. Kevin Shepherd still needing to make an additional pit stop as well. Dowski and Vilk showing as being in the pits at the moment. There's Dan Birch with Simon Tribeck there in the background. Tribeck having a big old moment there in his Bentley. That might be enough for Hutchinson to close the gap as well. Not quite close enough, unfortunately. There's Dan Birch in 21st position at the moment. Coming up the hill towards Druids. Hard on the brakes. I'll take a nice tight line through there. Coming down the hill now is Tom Carroll in the 162 McLaren. And coming into Graham Hill Bend now. Still a few drivers yet to make their second pit stops. Matt Sherblum, Simon Tribeck, Wood, Martin Chafer as well. So that could all change for those drivers. Just waiting to see what the gaps are like. But now looking at Nathaniel Shirley, having just passed a Lamborghini. Not for position, I should add. The Lamborghini in question, in fact, sorry, was for positions. It's actually Eddie Warden, having just, I presume, come out of the pits. So Ferreira and Woods are in the process of getting their final stops out of the way. 4 minutes and 51 seconds to go in the pit window. So there's not long left to make those second and final pit stops. Jack Alexander still leading as Kai Banks comes in for his pit stop. Lemke up into 4th place in the 71 Mercedes, Brown 5th, Vargas 6th. So Varga and Lemke and Schuller and Alexander all need to make another pit stop. So does Eddie Warden. See if Eddie decides to pull it off here. I believe he may have, indeed he has. So going to be a bit less pressure on Nathaniel Shirley, who has made his final pit stop already. So is Crawford Brown and Kai Banks. There's Shepherd coming in as well. Means that Wrightsma moves us up into the top 10. Shirley on the back of the battle here between Gomez and Banks. We look at the, speaking of the devil, we look at Wrightsma right now with Sam Kruger just behind him. Trebek and Sherburn yet to pit. Jack Alexander, I can confirm, is already in the pits. There's currently looking at Billy Hutchinson at the moment, as he is closing in on Birch. Still very grey and drizzly conditions here at Brands Hatch with just over 10 minutes to go. Drivers who haven't pitted don't have an awfully long time left. They've only got a few minutes. Depending on when they cross the start-finish line, it might be a case of either this lap or the next one to come in. For Martin Chafer, it will definitely be the next lap, I'd imagine. Through Westfield comes Billy Hutchinson, still trying to close the gap on Birch. Thought he very briefly got in the grass there a little bit, which would have been a bit of an unpleasant surprise in the braking zone for Sterling's. Chafer's come in for his final stop. Alexander and Schuller have both made theirs, so it's now a case of who blinks first, Lemke or Varga or Tribeck. All three will have to come in next time round. Shirley and Gomez battling away for 7th place, BMW on BMW. They took each other out. That would be a very awkward post-race debrief indeed, since the golden rule of motorsport obviously is don't take out your teammates. And unfortunately we've seen that enough times to know for a fact that yes, drivers do occasionally forget said rule. Both Lemke and Varga have come into the pits for their final pit stops. Banks, Shirley, Gomez all moving up a couple of positions as a result. Has Barnett done enough to split the gap between these two? Yes, he has. There's Lemke coming out the pits. Gianni Lenz just there as well. There's an Audi in there. I think Barnett may even actually be ahead as Sam Kruger in 10th place. So 9th place, excuse me. And indeed, I think Lemke has actually dropped a few more positions. Certainly I can see Reitzmer, Kruger and I think Gajea all there as well. So we'll keep an eye on that one for you. Now back with Nathaniel, Shirley and Hugo Gomez. There's contact between Gomez and Shirley. Shirley off into the grass and having to hit the brakes quite hard to get back onto the circuit. I was saying earlier on, the golden rule of motorsport, do not crash into your teammate, and well, both BMW drivers certainly have forgotten about that rule. Got someone waiting for comms, so I'm just going to plug my headset in so I can conduct an interview, because at the moment I've got my microphone in. We see Jack Mason and Martin Chafer there. Chafer just getting 25th place from Mason. There's Mad Al in the Aston Martin there just in the background. Mason's not giving up actually, to be fair. He is going to have a crack, and Chafer goes wide at Surtees, leaving Mason the line on the inside to go up into, well, say up into, more like back into 25th position. So good bit of racecraft there from Jack Mason. Mason and Chafer clearly showing both of the BMW drivers that it's possible to race your teammates without actually crashing into them. That's going to be clearly a very interesting debrief. And now I have my headset on, I can drag a guest into the commentary box as we see Nigel Wood and Dan Crinson battling away here. And I can say welcome to the commentary box, and also good morning as well to Damien Lowe.
Hello.
So how was the race been from your point of view?
Well, I tried to be careful throughout like the entire race because like it's wet and all that, and yeah, that didn't really go out as planned. I've been crashing out, or rather like cars have been crashing into me, but yeah, it is what it is, really.
Yeah, and well, you've got a bit of first-hand experience as well of the track conditions, so how kind of treacherous and how difficult is it, given that it's Brands Hatch but in the wet and it's being so narrow as well?
Well, Brands Hatch is like not real, like one of my very weak tracks. Like I'm just like not really good at it, and the wet conditions just like made it worse.
See, on
ooh,
screen.
that's touching between the Lambo and the Mercedes.
Yeah, Eddie Warden and Lemke, excuse me, having a big old scrap there for 13th place. Lemke losing the position, although he's going to try and have a drag race down the Pilgrim's Drop straight. Once again, although Eddie Warden does have the inside line for Hawthorns. There's the Porsche in the background, I think, of Matt Hodgson. So that's a lap down on these two here, and Warden already pulling a little bit of a gap with 4 minutes to go. It's also your debut in the Constructors Championship tonight as well. And what kind of are your expectations for the upcoming season?
Well, I wouldn't expect myself to be like in front or in the middle, like low midfield to back markers around there, because my pace is usually just that slow in general.
Well, then again, I've seen you racing in the in the GT Hub quote unquote mini league, except it lasted 6 months in the early part of 2021, and I can quite safely say you were not slow. So
the thing about that league was like I was also entirely new to like sim racing and ACC as a whole.
Yeah. But no, you still did a damn good job, mate.
Yeah.
As we see Jack Alexander in the Porsche, or one of the two Porsches, given that they've both got identical liveries, which is a very Porsche thing to do. He was the Porsche in front, I should add. Currently looking at Crawford Brown at the moment, trying to get through a little bit of lapsed traffic, although he's got a pretty good gap on Kai Banks in 4th place. Now looking at Hugo Gomez, who is back down in 6th place after contact with Nathaniel Shirley earlier on, which was a bit interesting to say the least, as Dan Birch there in 18th with Hutchinson just behind him. There's Jack Mason in 25th. You can see Mad Al just behind him in 26th, and having just got past Martin Chafer. Chafer being down in 27th at the moment. About 90 seconds or so left in the race. Trying to see roughly where the leaders are. That's Tom Carroll, I believe, in the McLaren, just getting out of the way a little bit there. Imagine going to be coming up to the final lap soon if we're not already on it. Mad Al and Jack Mason go side by side down the pit straight, heading into Paddock Hill Bend. Mad Al outbreaks Mason. Mason and Chafer nearly doing what the BMW drivers did, but in coming together on track, and Chafer sends up the inside, but he outbreaks himself, runs wide, and that's enough to let Mason back through for 26th place. All kicking off here as usual in the last moments of the race.
It actually looked like they were going to crash into each other into the first turn.
Yeah, it did for a bit, and then I'm wondering if the Ferrari team have their own mini voice chat, and probably would have had both drivers shouting at each other, don't crash into me, please. So yeah, it would be quite interesting to see how it looks from their perspective, other than very, very close indeed. As they come through Sheens once more for what I'm presuming is going to be the penultimate time. Looking at the race clock, where the white flag is out for the final lap of the race. Battle between Mason and Chafer has been brilliant news for Mad Owls. He's been able to pull a bit of a gap. Mason and Chafer look as if they're going to be going side by side into Paddock Hill once more. Mason once again on the inside by the looks of things. and we don't have a yellow flag, and in both of them have managed to negotiate it safely. Currently still with Mad Al coming down the hill through Graham Hill Bend to now the newer, tighter version of Graham Hill Bend, on the run up to Surtees now. There's Woods there in the Jaguar. I don't know if Al is going to be able to close the gap or not. Waiting to see when the race leader crosses the start-finish line. There's a battle going on here between Hutchinson and Birch. There's Badowski also there in the Bentley as well. I'd imagine the checkered flag will be waving fairly soon, depending on where the race leaders are. But it looks as if we're going to have another lap. There's Shepherd crossing the line. Birch, Hutchinson, Badowski is 17th, 18th, 19th and 20th. Hutchinson just about holding on. Jack Alexander's already crossed the line to take a dominant win for Porsche. Radek Schiller is in second place. We're currently looking at Magnus Dahlgren and Eddie Warden. At the moment, Vilk is in 22nd, just behind Debug. Crinson in 23rd. Crawford Brown's crossed the line in 3rd place. Godzilla, Kai Banksoy should be coming across the line in 4th place anytime now. There's Crinson. Wood 24th, Al 25th, Mason 26th, Schaefer 27th, Hottie 28th, Tom Carroll in 34th. You can see the cars streaming through there. And unfortunately, the auto director has decided to leave us with a car parked up in the pit lane. Hottie 27th, Day 28th. Konstantinov's crossed the line. Eugenie also coming home, making it home safely as well. There's Matt Hodgson just about to cross the line in 34th place ahead of Matt Sherblum and Craig Gilbert Wood. Lemke's come home in 14th. There's Atkinson in 15th there. Fred Ferreira is just crossing the line now. Still waiting on Chris Brook in the McLaren. But, wow, that was another fantastically entertaining round of the RWB International Constructors Championship. Got the Rookie Cup coming up soon as well. That's going to be very good fun indeed, especially for drivers who are maybe a little bit newer, perhaps not quite as experienced in sim racing. So that's going to be good fun. Also got the second round of the Endurance Championship at Barcelona coming up in March, and the sign-ups for it have been nothing short of incredible. They've sold faster than Jack Alexander's pace at the beginning of the race, which was very quick indeed. Well, thanks to RWB Nate Newcomer for hosting the stream as ever this evening. Thanks to Damien for popping into the commentary booth as well. I've been Rob Lomas. Round 2 of the Constructors Championship is next week. And as always, it's bye for now.